Hi everybody, this is Miranda Webb, and this is Conversations in Anarchy, and I'm coming to you with a interview with the lovely Sam Pilbeam. So how about we get started and just see how you're doing today?
Hi, Miranda. Yeah, I'm doing really good, thank you. I'm really excited as well to be going to Liberpulco. So, yeah, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's Monday. Probably going to be a Sunday by the time this is uploaded, but for me, it's Monday. So, start of the week, but feeling good, feeling good. So my first question with you is, how did you get involved with Anarchapulco?
So, I followed Jeff for over 10 years, and I'd always wanted to go to Anarchapulco, and yeah, it was just really. I'd made a decision. Right, I'm actually going to go this year. I'm going to go, but never had anyone to go with, and so I reached out and then told them about what we were doing and said we'd love to be speakers. And after quite a few conversations, it actually happened. So I went there in, 2 years ago, and then also this year. And so when I heard about Liberpulco, of course, I wanted to be part of that. So I'm doing a workshop there now.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I met you, for the audience, I met you at Anarchapulco, and this year has been, filled with a lot in terms of collaboration between the two of us. I am taking the Breath of Life course with Quantum Questions. I'm also doing the How to Live a Good Life course. And you have personally helped me with, I think, 5 or 6 breathwork sessions, which have really transformed how I deal with my past and my present. I definitely want to say to the people listening that if you're interested in breathwork in any form, Sam is the perfect way to kind of dip into that. And I also want to mention that, like, I personally was kind of skeptical at the idea of like virtual, because obviously you're in the UK, right?
Mhm.
I'm in Mexico, quite a distance. Most people do breathwork in person, but I was a little skeptical of doing breath work with you virtually, but I think I've had more intense sessions than even that first session I had with you in person in Acapulco this year, virtually speaking. So it's really cool that it's something that's so helpful that can also be done virtually. So I want to say thank you for that. It's been an intense experience with that.
Yeah, and I remember our first one was in person. It was when we met this year, wasn't it, in Mexico
Yep.
at Anarchapulco.
Yep. And
And
I burst into tears.
yeah, you've done really, really well. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you've done fantastically well. So yeah, well done.
Well, thank you, because it's not been easy, but it's been rewarding. So I want to know about what you found, like your experience to be with Anarchapulco, both virtually and in person, because I know you have been involved with at least one of our virtual events. So, like, what has that been like? What have you gotten out of it? What's your favorite thing about it? That sort of stuff.
Yeah, so previously to being actually involved, I had purchased the virtual ticket twice, so I'd watched it online. And then 2023, I was there in person, obviously on stage, and it was just like a dream come true. It's so incredible to actually be there with like-minded people and all the other speakers who I'd been watching and following for years. The atmosphere was just fantastic, and it really gave me such hope about the future. So if anyone's thinking about going to Liberpulco or even Anarchapulco next year, highly recommend it. The online session that I was involved in, was something that Rebecca had, she'd actually organised, and it was, she does different webinars, I think. So I was involved in that, and that was I think that was last year as well. And so actually being at the event is really fantastic, and it gives you all the tools you need for this crazy world we're living in. So yeah, I'd highly recommend
Yeah, it's
it.
not just about talking about the problems like a lot of people like to do. It's about actually finding solutions for things. That's one of, I think, why I grasped onto what you guys do a lot is there are a lot of people still out there just talking about the problems, but your workshop, if I remember correctly, this year was a breathwork ceremony, and I heard quite a few people have, really, really good things to say about it. It wasn't just sitting down and absorbing information. It was, like one guy is just like, I just burst into tears remembering something I haven't thought about in years. And it's like, well, it's
Yeah,
not enough to talk about things. It's you got to really practice with it.
yeah, absolutely. Well, many of us carry emotional trauma and stuck emotional energy, and it's important to get that out because otherwise we're carrying it around like this emotional lead. And breath work is one of the tools that I use and teach, and it's incredibly effective. So the rebirthing breath work, which I've trained and practiced for over 10 years, is a modality that it's a continuous conscious circular breath, also known as rebirthing. And what that does, it helps people to get into an altered state and access the subconscious, because that's where you can help to influence the person and shift and change negative beliefs. Many people have what we call in the breathwork community as a personal lie, which is their most negative belief about themselves. Now, this is one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in Liberpulco and helping people with, because once you can identify this negative belief, which actually is a lie, that's why we call it a personal lie, you're shining the light of awareness on it, and then you can help to shift it by doing breathwork sessions or affirmations. But it really is effective once you've identified it, then to have breathwork sessions, and then I do the work with people on a one-to-one basis. It really helps people shift trauma and maybe things that they're really holding on to, which is keeping them kind of locked in this prison really of all this emotion. And people do, especially sometimes in group sessions, but definitely in one-to-ones, they let go of so much, and this helps them to expand and really have freedom in their lives.
Yeah, I noticed at least to talk about my own experiences a little bit, because when people hear about breath work, it all seems kind of vague, and it's like, okay, I'm going to breathe and I'm going to think about stuff. And you mentioned the altered state, but it really truly is an altered state. I remember after my first session with you, I asked if hypnosis was involved because my brain was working in a different way, but also like my body almost felt like paralyzed. And I've noticed this more and more in each session we do, specifically in my hands. We've talked about this. I will get this like my hands will kind of stay in this position, usually at my sides, but and I'll feel almost like energy blasting out of my hands. And I remember after one of the virtual sessions, you were like, okay, go back to normal. And I'm like, well, I can't move my hands. Like, what do I do? And you gave me some tips to be able to, fully come out of it. But you really do shift into this alternate thing. And you, at least for me, and I assume this is how it works for other people, but you took me to the past, you took me to the future, you had me talking to myself, you had me talking to my parents. It's almost like a reparenting thing in certain regards as well, which I found really interesting. I mean, you even had me talking to police that had raided my childhood home as a kid, you know, to rewire kind of how I deal with that in them. And it's like, it's definitely a lot more than just breathing deeply and thinking about things. And I think that's important to point out because it truly is like an alternative state. And it's pretty intense, but it's definitely worthwhile as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I just want to just assure people that it's not all it can be really beautiful. You can have magnificent states in the breath work. It's not always emotional and things like that. Like not everyone has lots of emotion that will come out. Some people do. Some people have incredible states, even the first one. And in the one-to-one sessions, what I do is I also do angelic Reiki. So I bring in the angelic presence, music as well. And then I also do timeline therapy, which is an NLP technique. And all of those have, I've found been really effective in each session. I mean, one client I've got, he had a traumatic birthday experience when he was 7. And since then, he'd never had a birthday and decided he didn't birthdays. Anyway, so I went through that with him in the session, and he phoned me up and he said, "You're not going to believe this." He said, "The next day, my sister phoned me up and she said, 'Look, we're going to have to sort this birthday thing out.' And she said, 'We need you to celebrate our birthdays.' And he said, and I hadn't told her, and it's just quite amazing because it shifts things on an energetic level. Because when we shift ourselves, when we, heal ourselves, then the external people can feel it externally. So when we are not carrying around tension and trauma, then we let that go, and then, people act differently around us. If we, for example, are carrying a lot of anger around, then guess what? We're going to attract anger to us. Or if we're defensive, defenses attract attack. So it's really important to do the work on yourself, with tools like this, with breath work. And I've had just incredible results using these modalities. And in the group session, obviously it's not a one-to-one, so I won't be doing things like timeline therapy. I just manage it in a group, and I do angelic Reiki healing on people. And I've also got someone assisting me doing that. So hopefully it'll just be a beautiful experience and very healing experience for everyone.
Yeah, I want to touch on a few things of what you said. The first thing is you had mentioned that client in which it kind of shifted how his sister called him and was acting differently in regards to this specific thing. And you said to me before, when you heal yourself, you end up automatically kind of healing the ones that you love in relation to you, at least with how they deal with you. And I personally have experienced that firsthand because I've been dealing with a lot of like anxiety and sadness and despair over my past situations that I've dealt with. And I have noticed a huge difference in how pretty much everybody interacts with me, like including in my relationship. I've noticed a huge difference in terms of like, because I'm not so anxiety filled and emotionally needy and things of that nature. And I end up getting more out of my relationships without having to try to get more out of my relationships. So there's really something to that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is you mentioned the angelic Reiki. I personally was like, I started all of this stuff. I'm really into human design and numerology and all of that stuff now, but I started all of that stuff as a hardcore skeptic. I'm like, the moon does not affect how we feel. Stop it. Like I was very much that. And when it came to Reiki, I remember I had an experience. I worked at a cat shelter. This is a little bit of a tangent, but it has a point, I promise. I worked at a cat shelter. And I was volunteering there and I was just taking care of the animals. And there was this woman that came to volunteer and all she wanted to do was Reiki. And she was just trying to do Reiki on the animals to keep them from getting sick. And I remember like she spent like an hour doing it over my favorite cat who had feline FIV, which is kind of similar to HIV, but for cats. And he was dying and she did that and it didn't save him. And I was like, oh, Reiki's dumb. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But I am convinced that there really is something to the Reiki side of it because I've, experimented doing the continuous breath as part of the Breath of Life course, but also it's different in terms of effect emotionally and physically as to when I'm doing sessions with you, in which I know you're doing the Reiki from afar. So I just wanted to mention that. I know there's going to be people that are going to be like, oh God, Reiki. But like, I am now somebody who, I don't understand it, but I know that it works. So I want to say thank you for kind of showing me that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, animals, they never lie. People, I mean, I do it on a lot of animals. Since I've been kind of open to Reiki, I've had my attunements. I do get animals coming up to me a lot more. And it could be that and also the heart opening that I've done as well. But lots like this has happened more than just a couple of times. Like dogs will come up to me and just lean on me and their owners have said, oh my God, he never does that to anyone. And it's the animals don't lie. So they feel it. And, anyone can do it. We're all actually natural healers. And it's just channeling the healing from the universe, from the angels as well. So I was also tuned to Usui Reiki, which is the traditional Reiki, but now I just use angelic because I like working with the angels. So, and I think they are definitely here to assist us. So yeah.
So I've asked you this in person, but how did you get into all of this from the breath work to the angelic Reiki? Like, where did this road start? Because everybody starts somewhere with it. It's not just like you wake up and are born, doing this.
So, well, I was lucky enough to be born into a family that were very open to vibrational medicine and, meditation. So I learned transcendental meditation when I was 14. Me and my sister, my parents were into it, so they took us both. And my dad also had Bruce Lipton books. He also studied electrocrystal therapy, and he was measuring the energy of an apple. When I was at school, with all my friends around him, he said, right, I want you to be nasty to the apple. And then he measured it and the energy went down. And then he said, right, send all your love to the apple. And then the energy went up. And it was quite miraculous, really. So I suppose being in that environment, it was normal for me to look into what is this universe? What are we doing here? And also the spiritual side, I was interested in because of my first experience of meditation. So then I studied all sorts of natural healing modalities, including Reiki and also dowsing. And then I saw an advert for breathwork, and it was in this clinic, and I thought, oh, that would be amazing for my mother. So I went back. So I'm just trying to get out the sun here. That's better. So I went home and said, oh, I found this amazing breathwork event. Do you want to go to it? And she said, well, you go and tell me what it's like. So anyway, I went and joined this breathing circle, and then that was my journey. And actually, for me, it was really incredible because I actually breathed through a huge unconsciousness pattern. In fact, my breathwork teacher said she'd never seen anyone so bad apart from this one priest that she'd met. So my birth was basically my mum was given pethidine, And so so I was drugged at birth, basically. And so then this is going a bit deep into the breath work, what I do in sessions, but when we're born, this is our first experience of life. And as a baby, we don't have the consciousness to realize. So many times our experience can affect how we view life. So my birth was very difficult. I felt like I had to do it myself. And then this was my kind of imprint for life, like it's difficult and I had to do it myself. Also because of the drugs that were given, I think it's pethidine, I had this issue where I literally couldn't even read a page of a book at night. I would just fall asleep. And I would fall asleep in lectures, and it was just a real problem for me. It wasn't, I think, no, it wasn't that condition where I think they call it narcolepsy, is it? Where you fall asleep all the time. Something like that. It wasn't that bad, but it was pretty bad. So I actually had to be, during the breathwork workshops, to keep me awake, they had to have 2 people walking me round, literally walking around the garden because I'd be falling asleep. Anyway, it took me quite a number of years, and I was just about to give up. And Lucy said, "Come on, let's try one more session." Lucy, who I work with on the quantum questions. And then I managed to breathe through it, and it was like a light bulb went off. And so now it definitely shifted things in me big time. And then after that, my breathwork sessions were really beautiful and just sublime experiences. And I breathed through so much trauma and limitations. And during one session, I had lots of shaking, like the body was just shaking out all the trauma. Like animals shake when they've had trauma, and that's their way of kind of, getting the adrenaline out. Well, if we don't do that, if we've had shock and we have that freeze response, then that can get stuck in the body. So this shaking happened, and then this voice came through. I don't know whether it was my higher self or some angelic entity, but it said, how you see yourself is how the world sees me. And it was this message that came through when I was in this beautiful state. I just shook out a load of trauma, and I was very open to receiving that, obviously. So that was my breathwork journey, sort of over 10 years. And then I discovered the current path that I'm on, the yogic path, and then studied pranayama, and now I teach pranayama. And the way I use the breathwork and the pranayama is for people who come to me with traumas and issues. I start them off on the breathwork. Usually 10 sessions, one-to-one sessions are enough. Some people book more, but then, I start them on our courses, which really help, which you're on the Good Life course. I start them on that one, and then they go on to the Breath of Life, which is the pranayama. So I hope that wasn't too much of a longer answer to you.
No, that was what I was looking for. I wanted to really get into the meat of it. Because it's definitely a journey. I would say that like the biggest word for me this entire year has been kind of, breathe, because I started with Anarchapulco and I did that session with you, and it was like, I had briefly mentioned this, but like Anarchapulco in general, for me, always has been. I've been involved for every year in some way, at least virtually, except for the first year. So 9 years of my adult life with Anarchapulco in some way. And Anarchapulco always, like Kat and I, we have referred to it as a portal, and it kind of is. Like going there, it's going to bring what's buried inside up, for better or for worse. It brings up traumas, it brings up, maybe love that you have trapped inside that you don't have anywhere to give it, because, most people do not have the luxury that I do to live in a way to where I can just kind of live as myself all the time. Most people are still kind of stuck in the rat race, still working a normal job, surrounded by normies, kind of losing their mind a little bit over it while wanting to be better. And so there's always something that's coming up for everybody that comes to Anarchapulco. That's why people come year after year after year. That's why there are people that have come every year since the beginning. It's because there's something about it. And I mention this because this year, the first 3 days of Anarchapulco, I was just in, because for me, as co-producer, I attend, but also it's my biggest working week of the year. I'm walking for 15 hours a day, talking to literal hundreds of people. And it's a lot, it's a lot. And then combined with like regular life, it's it can be hard to manage. And this year, the uncomfortable thing was I had like 3 days of like I was on it, I was like dynamic, I was in a great mood, I was getting stuff done. And then Thursday, a lot of things, personal things, came up all at once, and I was just not functional. I was just like sad the whole day. And then I had already had plans to meet with you because Emma Garrard, who does the painting, she managed the volunteers last year. We're hoping to have her back doing something with art this year, because that's what she really does best. She kept telling me, because she and I are very good friends, she kept telling me, you have to talk to Sam. You have to talk to Sam and, do breath work with her and learn about her stuff. And so the day I saw you, that I think the day before, and I was like, hey, let's sit down and talk. I want to talk about what you do. And we had made the plan to meet. And like that whole morning, I was just like, I am struggling today. We'll see what happens. And I remember going to the VIP, we were going to have lunch, and I go to the VIP section with you and sit down, and I just burst into tears. And you handled it, because for me, that might have been a little awkward. Like, okay, I'm just meeting this girl. She's co-producer of this event. She's supposed to be working, and she's sobbing. So you took me off to the side. We talked about what specifically was making me upset. And I was like, so what do I do? And you're like, well, you recommended me immediately the Breath of Life, which is interesting that you usually have people do the Good Life and then the Breath of Life, because I did it the opposite. Partially because the Breath of Life started sooner, but you were like, yeah, I would recommend you do that. It's a 28-week course. And there was part of me that was like, yes. And there was other part of me that's like, 28 weeks of breathing? All right. And I'm a little over halfway through, and now I understand why. There's a lot to it. But and then immediately, like, you're here at this event to network, to meet with people, to, do whatever, to speak. And I'm supposed to be working, but I'm having a hard time. You see that, and you're like, now would be a good time to do this session if you can, but you're working, so I get that. And I was like, look, all I have to do is call Kat, and she'll let me leave, and she'll cover me. I guarantee it. And I did, and we did the session, and I came back, and it was so funny. And I think a few people thought I was a little crazy, because they were like, hey, you seem like you're doing better, because I was just not super high energy. I wasn't like crying at everybody, but I was just very low energy until I sat down with you and burst into tears. And I was like, yeah, kind of had a little bit of emotional thing, went and did a breathwork session, cried a whole bunch. I'm good now. But like, yeah, there is the emotional side of it, but there's something like after, that really, really matters. And even like I had a tough time where I was having, a lot of things happen at once this summer, including having to move. And I asked you for help, and I ended up just crying most of that session with your help. And then I came out of the session, and then I immediately like shifted to solutions and everything that was making me upset. And it was a lot of stuff. Like, I had really good reason to be upset. And it was a lot of stuff all at once. And everything that was making it like shifted, around me. And I just got into action and solved what I needed to solve and let everything else fall into place, and it did. So there is really, really something to this. And I also want to mention like the Breath of Life course, that has been it's been a practice of discipline. I've been able to focus more. I noticed this because I clock every minute I spend doing things throughout the day to know where my time goes. And on days where I do it first thing in the morning, and it being various practices that are assigned, or when we have breaks where we can kind of build our own little practices. But if I do breath work to start the day, I get way more done than if I don't. I actually had this conversation with my boyfriend yesterday. He's like, I was surprised to hear you say you spend an hour doing this. Like, I don't know. That's a lot of time to spend breathing. And I like to just get things done. And I'm like, yeah, but like I get almost like 30 to 50% more stuff done if I spend that hour in the morning than if I don't. And if I just try to go into the day. So there really is something to it. It's the ability not just to process emotions, but to actually be able to focus. That is, I think, what's been huge for me and what a lot of people lack.
Yeah, 100%, because, our attention is being stolen all the time. We seem to be busier than ever because we've got mobile phones, we've got things coming at us. Even though we've got, amazing technology, it feels like we are getting busier. And actually setting the stage, and if you like, in the morning, setting the standard for the rest of the day, really does help. And I know many people who are in your community probably do that already, have their own spiritual practice. So it is really effective, as you've seen. And I don't know if you've got the focus of attention lesson yet. Have you been doing that?
We did that. That was last week's lesson. And
Right.
yeah, it's interesting because it lined up because I'm also in the Good Life course, and it lined up with the tapas part of the Good Life course, which tapas, a quick explanation, is like you set an intention of something, a certain amount of time that you want to try to do something, and you do it, and you kind of think your way through, but also you do the thing. And for me, I had the focus of attention course in the beginning of last week, and I was having a really hard time focusing because, well, I have a lot of things going on, like personally, and I'm just signed up for a songwriting course with my favorite rapper, Brother Ali, and that was all starting that day. And I have a lot of work to do, and I was just not able to function. And we did the focus of attention, and then 2 days later we had the tapas thing, and it's like, okay, yeah, think about something attainable that's going to help you, in some way. And I'm like, I gotta delete social media off my phone. So I kind of melded the two together. And yeah, so I deleted social media off my phone, and it's been since last Thursday, and I have managed to get a lot more done and be able to focus a lot more, because you're right, attention is being just ripped and stolen at every instance.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we practice focus of attention exercises, because, we really need to do that, especially during these times, because, there is so much, people are stealing our attention everywhere, advertising, politicians, TV, not that I have a TV, but you know what I mean. And the more you can be in control of your focus of attention, the better your day will be, because you can focus your attention at will at any time for as long as you want as well. So that in turn helps your spiritual practice. It can help with all sorts of things as well, like, if people have addictions or, food cravings, that kind of thing, if they've got the ability to put their focus on something else anytime they wish, then that will go away. And it also helps with, if you're doing your spiritual practice, it's way more effective if you've got good focus of attention, because your mind's not wandering, you're really focused on what you're doing. So you're going to get much better results. and also through the breath work as well. Although, actually doing the breathing is a focus of attention exercise, because you're focusing on, your breath and, the breathing. And when you're doing either the circular or the pranayama, which I know you've been doing as well.
Yeah, I've been kind of doing all of it. And I found it interesting because like the breath work, yeah, it is a breath work course, but there's a lot more to it. There's the warm-ups, you do asanas, which are just, prolonged yoga positions of certain kinds with certain intentions. And then there's the breath. And then there's also like the thing that's been a game changer for me in a lot of ways is, I have both ADHD and autism. So my nervous system, for the most part, is kind of like this all the time. But the conscious relaxation, I think that's a big part of, because even if I don't have time to do the full hour, I'll still do like the warm up, a few of the asanas, and then the relaxation to make it so I'm at least, because I wake up and then I remember all the things that I have to do, and then I start to spiral until I do the relaxation. And then it's like, okay, now I flow into, eating breakfast and then getting started at work. And there really is something, and relaxation also sounds a little vague. It was for me at least, but like it is consciously relaxing every part of you and then like feeling like what that feels like, which it's a strange feeling, let me tell you, but it's absolutely worth it. So the breath of life isn't just, okay, I'm going to breathe in these specific ways and I'm going to hold my breath at this time and I'm not going to hold my breath at this other time. It's a whole thing. And yeah, there's the focus of attention exercises and like the ping pong ball exercise and all of the other little things that yeah, I highly recommend it to anybody who is either just looking to deal with life better, or people who, like me, like before I started all of this stuff, for example, I would work in 15-minute increments on any one thing. And so I would do 15 minutes of one job and then I would get really distracted and I would have to go and do something completely different. And I would just bumble my way through the day like that. And I was productive, but it was also like 15 minutes of focus at a time. Whereas at this point, now I can get up to a few hours of focus on one thing and just flowing through it before I start to feel the little monkey in my brain start to do backflips and say we need to do something else. um, so that's really, really something, and I think is definitely worth mentioning. And then the How to Live a Good Life course, like I don't think, and I know it's not like this isn't a criticism, because how do you name these things in a way that explains what they're actually about? But like Breath of Life and How to Live a Good Life, when you hear them, you're like, well, what does it mean?
Lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I can hear you now. You're just starting to talk about the Good Life course.
So yeah, with the Good Life course, I was just talking about the names of them because it's hard to name things like this. Because when I went to the courses, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna breathe. And then, okay, how to live a good life. I already kind of live a good life, but we'll see what it's about. And it's like, it's not easy to name those things and to get everything from hearing the name as you might with, like, for example, the songwriting course I'm doing with Brother Ali. It's how to die writing a song. That's pretty clear. You're gonna learn how to write a song, but it's so much more than that. And it's, you really look at how certain things are happening in your life and, the stories that we tell ourselves and how we interact with the people around us and how we interact with ourselves and how to actually, live in this world. So it's all encompassing. It's not just, how to be happy or how to breathe or yoga. It's a whole all-encompassing thing that I think is really interesting and worth mentioning for anybody who's interested in these things. It's not just somebody talking at you and telling you things you can do to make your life good. It's presenting ideas that have been around for, centuries,
Mm.
probably longer, and inviting you to think about them, and then offering things like, my favorite part of the Good Life course so far has been the tapas thing, because it's like, okay, here's a really practical thing. Pick one thing and you can do it, 7 days, or you can do it 49 days, or you can do it however long you need. Stick to the thing with intention for the whole duration that you originally commit to, and see what happens. And it was within 2 days of starting this first one with the social media, where I was like, yeah, I don't know if I should put, I deleted TikTok and Facebook primarily. I don't really go on the other social media. So they're still there. I just don't really go to them. But I don't know if I'm going to go back, other than posting things on Facebook from my computer occasionally. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you'll probably get loads more done if you don't go back. That's the thing, isn't it? Getting these distractions out. So yeah, the Good Life course has transformed so many people. It's quite amazing, really. And also this linked into an experience I had at Anarchapulco. So we came about these teachings from our teacher, Dvaitananda Stoyan. They're online. They're called the Yamas and the Yamas, and it's stages 1 and 2 of the 8 limbs of yoga, and they're there. It's stages 1 and 2 for a reason, because it's 10 lessons, moral lessons. So things not to do, and things. So 5 things not to do, 5 things to do. And the first one of not to do is ahimsa, which is non-violence. So these were written, or they were passed down from thousands of years ago, and they were written down by an Indian saint called Patanjali. And he had the foresight to realize that we need them during these times, because right now, society is at an all-time low morally. And after I'd listened to Mark Passio, he'd said that there is a direct correlation between our freedom and morals in society. And I thought, oh my God, that's why we were given these lessons. Because, if everyone gets on this moral path, the teachings that were given to us from thousands of years ago, then we gain more freedom. And it makes sense, because if you're looking at what's happening now, you've got people rioting, and they're going, right, so we need more police, we need more facial recognition, we need this. So, the more we kind of break these moral codes, the less freedom we have. So that's actually led on to Greg and I starting a new platform, because we decided that we needed to put our main focus on teaching these lessons to people. So we're starting a new platform called the Heart Wisdom Collective, and it's on School. We're just building it at the moment, School with a K. And we're literally going to be focusing on teaching people the Good Life course. And then once they've done that, the Great Life course, which is another level of going even deeper into the lessons. And what we've found is that as people learn these lessons, they evolve, and they grow, and they become more heart-based, which is the solution to what we're experiencing in the world now. Like if we're more heart-based, then there's more love in the world. We grow in consciousness. We achieve what we want. We achieve our dreams, but also in a very conscious way, which then helps others. So we've decided to really focus on that, and take it out to the world. And yeah, the Great Life is, again, you haven't done that, but that is, people were asking, right, we want to go deeper into the lessons. So then we said, right, we'll do a more intensive. So there is other levels to this, and then people can go on and actually coach people using these teachings. So hopefully that will spread out into the world even more. So that's our kind of mission at the moment.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned ahimsa because like yeah, there's these phrases and I had actually come across the phrase ahimsa or the word ahimsa because I was taking yoga classes and for Christmas we had a yoga class and she gave us a candle and then she had us like pull a thing out of a bag and a piece of paper and said it was our lesson for the year and it was the beginning of 2023 and I got ahimsa and I was like nonviolence. I'm not a violent person. Like she didn't do the best job of explaining it to me because she's Mexican that speaks some English, but not she didn't do the best job of explaining it because I remember encountering it in the Good Life course in like the first or second week. I think it was the second week we encountered ahimsa. But ahimsa is, you know, violence as what's defined under that is not what I expected. And that's what I've found is each week, you know, it's like, okay, then there's, I forget the word for it, but there's the non-stealing one. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't steal. And it's like, but do you steal attention from people or do you steal attention from yourself by spending too much time on social media? You know, or for the ahimsa thing, it's like, okay, yeah, you're not around smacking people upside the head and hurting people or trying to kill people, but like, are you kind to yourself? Do you
Mm.
spend a lot of time judging yourself for, you know, mistakes you made in the past? That one was what got me, and I was just like, oh, maybe I did need that a little bit because I am, by definition, kind of a hyper productive person. And if I'm not being super productive, there's part of me that's like, okay, so what am I even doing? You know, I wrap my value up in getting things done. And if you do that, that's technically, you know, kind of a form of violence against yourself because you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, these phrases at first glance seem simple, but when you really look at them, it's like, oh, okay, you know, I actually might be guilty of that one, you know. And there's pretty much every one, there's always something where it's like the non-lying thing. It's like, okay, I don't lie to the people that I care about. It's like, or do I? Or do I lie to myself? You know, it's really interesting how that works. Yeah, I think it's kind of pivotal information that most people just kind of overlook and go past
Mm.
and don't really absorb into themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first time I came across these yamas and niyamas, the first one, ahimsa, non-violence, or kindness to self and others. I remember I was on a silent retreat, and it was actually my first silent retreat. And Greg said to me, "Come on, let's," because there was part one, two, and three, and he said, "Let's do the whole thing." So the whole thing was like 12 days, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, you know, no speaking for 12 days," and then the voice in my head was really not kind. And I thought, this is unbelievable. I wouldn't speak to my friend like this. So why am I talking to myself like this? Why am I judging myself, criticizing myself? And I think today, especially in these times when people are so busy, like when do people really have silence? This is actually led to us running silent retreats, especially after a friend of mine, she actually took her own life. She went on she was a yoga teacher, Pilates teacher. She ran meditation courses. She went on a Vipassana silent retreat. I think it's like 10 or 12 days, maybe even longer. Anyway, she hadn't built the foundation of the yamas and yamas, like non-violence to self, the first lesson. If she'd have done the Good Life course first, I believe she'd have been here with us today. Because what happened to her, she went on this silent retreat, and this voice in her head, she decided she was not a nice person. Okay, because you are not the voice in your head. Okay, that is not you. We are so much more than that, and people mistake that. They think the voice in their head is them. So she went on this silent retreat. She'd got into her head that she was a horrible person, and then that was it. She'd had a relationship breakup, went on the silent retreat, decided she was horrible, and then her body started seizing up because of, I think, because of her mind, and she was just shutting down. Instead of expanding using the heart, she was so in her head and so distraught by what she'd found. She just kept contracting and contracting and contracting. And then I found out that she took her own life. And that was one of the things that led Greg and I to do the silent retreats that we run, which are 4 days, and we help people understand, why it's important to calm the mind, get into the heart, and also to build this foundation first before you go off and do things like that, because it can be traumatic. So that's why it's really important. And also we really put emphasis on getting into the heart, opening the heart, forgiving people, separating the person from their behavior, and really expanding through that, really. And that will help. If you can do that for yourself, that's going to help others around you, because your resonance will be more heart-based and it'll be more relaxed and expanded. And that's how we help others, by being an example.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's kind of a trap that society gets into. Most people don't have good self-talk to themselves. They talk to themselves the way they would never, like you said, I wouldn't talk to my friend like this. I wouldn't talk to my loved ones like this. Why do I talk to myself like that? And for me personally, that's been a huge part of my journey. Like most people, when I came into this community in 2016, I was with my ex, who's now, passed away. And I was definitely a completely different person. I was in an abusive relationship. I had really horrible self-talk, and it was partially because of the talk I was getting from him, but I was only dealing with what he was giving me because of where I had started. It's so common for people to say, make a mistake, be like, ugh, I'm an idiot, and like, oh, I'm so stupid. And it's just like, other than me using it as an example here, at this point in my life, like 6 years ago, that was me every day. It was like, I'm just stupid, I'm like, but in that relationship, I heard, are you retarded, more than I heard, I love you. So it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy there. But so now I wouldn't ever do that, but I notice it like in the friends I have that are struggling more emotionally and mentally. When they make a mistake, they're like, "Oh, I'm an idiot." And it's just like, but you're not. You're a human being. You made a mistake. It's not even that big of a deal. And usually it's something simple. It's like, "Oh, I wasted this food," or something. Like it's like,
Yeah.
you probably shouldn't be talking to yourself like that, but it is so common, that programming of like, oh, I'm dumb, or oh, I'm not good enough, or the only, and I've been working on it a lot. The only thing that I still deal with is if I get into, you know, being a woman, I have hormonal shifts. My brain doesn't work quite the same as it does in other parts of my cycle. And I've been learning about that a lot this last year, and having to learn to be gentle. Like if I am in a day where my brain's not functioning as well, my focus isn't as well, and even if I'm in pain, for obvious mentioned reasons, it's you have to learn to be gentle with yourself, because our value is not wrapped up in what we can produce and how many tasks we can get done in a day. Like when you die, people aren't like, man, he got his to-do list done every single day. I mean, maybe, but like for the most part, that's not it. It's usually, oh, they were a good person and they loved a lot, and they helped their friends and family, and like all of these things. Those are the things we're remembered for. So yeah, I definitely think it's true that that voice in your head is not who you are. It is, I don't really know what that is, but from what I can tell, and it's interesting because they say in society, don't get your self-worth from other people. But the reality is, like, when you get yourself in alignment with the way you're supposed to be living, with whatever that may be, um, who you are is reflected by who you are surrounded with and what they tend to have to say about you and what you offer the world, and often like that's super super different. And I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine. She's a few years younger than me. And I've been working with her on this because she's just like, she's kind of hard on herself. And I'm like, she's like, oh, I feel like I should be farther on this than I am. And I'm like, well, I've been told, I think it was you maybe that even told me this, but we are the last person to notice the progress that we make within ourselves. Everybody else starts noticing all these shifts in us, interacting with us before we do. And it's like, you need to listen to what other people are telling you, when you're surrounded by good people, of course. Like if you have people around you telling you like, hey, you're an amazing person and you really get things done and I'm proud of you, you should probably believe them. I don't know.
Yeah, and but I think if you know if you've got all those people around you, you're doing good. I think people that are praising you and being kind. For me, it was, as this heart opening journey, I just noticed that thing. I was attracting softer kind of people into my world. And actually, because I loved myself more, I wasn't putting up with any abuse from anyone. Like even if someone was abusive, it just didn't happen. And I would definitely be speaking out against it, speaking out for others. And so for me, the whole journey is about really opening your heart, loving yourself, and knowing who you are. I mean, who we are, that's a lifelong quest for many of us. Like, who are we really? Because we're not our name, we're not these labels that people put on us. So, but I think the journey is opening the heart, getting into the heart, and really calming the mind so that we have that wisdom, because all the answers are there. When I say get into the heart, I'm talking about our heart chakra, and the wisdom that's there. So yeah, I think you've done amazingly well, and I can see the changes just in such a short period of time, which is incredible. If you think a lot of people try and change themselves and they go for therapy and it takes years and years and years, and you've really, I think, accelerated in just a short few months, really, relatively.
Yeah, I've done therapy before. And to me, like conventional therapy, is talking it out and everything. It just opens old wounds and then it leaves them there gaping and then provides nothing practical. I mean, they, try to prescribe medications, but when I did therapy, I refused, I knew better than that. But yeah, it's really interesting to me like how far I have shifted so many things in terms of my outlook on how things are going and what to expect from things. Like I'm definitely not perfect. I'm definitely, still a human being, but I am just more proud of who I am. And I also have these tools to where like regardless of what situation I'm in, you know, I can really sit down and okay, I have these tools no matter where I'm at. So I can, do the box breath or I can do the yogic breath or something to the relaxation. At this point, it's funny because I've heard the recording so many times that I know exactly what's going to be said as it's going to be said in the recording, and I could play it to myself if I really needed to, in my head without having to listen to it or depend on my phone. Um, and I think that is invaluable. It's for me, I grasp on to practical things, and this has been one of the most practical things that I have ventured into in my lifetime in terms of like, people think of spirituality and they're like, oh, it's just woo woo. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking and then I feel stuff and that's it. And I just sit still in a certain position and I feel, stuff. But like it's a process and it's sticking to it and really over time you do really kind of get that cumulative effect of, okay, now this is how I interact with the world. And I know, like I have all these tools, like if I have a hard time falling asleep at night, I will put on the relaxation and do it from my bed and I will fall asleep before it's done. And that sort of stuff it's just fascinating to me. So I do want to say thank you definitely for taking your Thursday of Anarchapulco to, because it was hours. It was like a few hours of talking before we went to your hotel room, and then it was a few hours of the actual like ceremony and coming out of it and coming back. But I feel so much better able to face anything that's coming my way, which, I've got some big things happening, and we'll see what happens with them, and then they happen with them. But like, I'm no longer, worried about the same things that I was. And that's really cool. That's super, super cool. So, I, for one, am happy that you have come to Anarchapulco. I think people tend to be drawn to Anarchapulco for a reason. There's that destiny aspect of it. And I mentioned the people I'm surrounded with. Well, most of the people that I have that I'm surrounded with, energetically speaking, because a lot of them are all over the world, are people that I found through Anarchapulco. Like, I've had some hard times, as a lot of people know, involved with Anarchapulco, but the family that I've built out of it, that and all the tools that I've gotten and the ways that I've managed to transform, and the opportunities, professionally, and everything that I've gotten, it is unmatched to anything else that I've been involved with in my life.
Yeah, and it's interesting because although I've only been to an Acapulco these 2 years running, I heard Jeff talking about how it used to be and how it's evolved, especially as he's got more into his meditation and spirituality, and it's grown into a more spiritual and heart-based event, which is fantastic. So, it sounds like you've been on this incredible journey with everyone as well. And I know everyone works really hard to really create, the right vibe. And certainly that's what I felt when I
Yeah,
went there the first
you
time.
arrived in the glory days, as I like to call them, because yeah, my first day in Acapulco, it was exciting, but it was also like, it was really party based. It was like, yeah, let's all come together and let's party together. And it was fun, but it was a lot. And I'm laughing a little to myself because I just redesigned the whole Anarchapulco website. It took almost a month to do, and I created a timeline page. Well, it's the about page on the website. It has a timeline and it shows the history. And I asked just before I finished it, I had written something, but Kat's like, yeah, that's from your voice. Maybe we should have Jeff write something, year by year, little blurb about each year. And I asked him, and he's like, well, I'm sure you know this better than anyone. I don't remember most of the years of Anarchapulco. I am not the best one to be writing what happened. And I was like, oh, okay. So here's what I wrote, like, and he really liked what I wrote, but that's just evidence as to like, it was, it's been a big journey of growth, because it started off, and the big intention was we have to get the biggest names in the movement and get them all in one place and party together. And by the time we ended up taking over in 2021, like, I think we were allowed to have like 100 people total on site, and like 30 of those were speakers and staff, and like the rest were attendees. And we had to be really intentional on who we brought. And we also, like, Kat, um, the producer and my best friend, she came into it like, we have to clean this up energetically. There were a lot of people that were, taking advantage of Anarchapulco, really entitled to, free entry and whatever may come with that, and not super appreciative and not really giving anything in return. And we cleaned a lot of those people out. And there was a lot of weirdness as we shifted, but it just got like better and better every year. And it went from, in the series, Nathan talks about how, it's all chaos, and that's just what it is. And that's Anarchapulco. And it's like, we don't really deal with chaos at this point. Like, our biggest chaos at this point is like, this past year, we had power and internet issues because we were throwing the event in a hurricane ravaged part of Mexico that barely had electricity connected at all by that point. And like that was our biggest hurdle. You know, it wasn't like oh, there's drama between people and, you know, there's danger and all of this. It was like, you know, and the electricity really only affected like me and a few other staff members trying to stay on site. You know, we had generators for the stage. None of the guests knew that we were struggling, but like, yeah, it's really interesting, you know, how those things have shifted. You know, it's really cool to kind of see that evolution of like, you know, I think it was 2020 or maybe it was 2019, one of the 2 years, Jeff got beat up at the conference by one of the speakers. And that guy's a crazy guy. Yeah, it's mentioned in the Anarchist series. This guy named Quinique, he's really intense. And he came and was just fighting with everybody that he encountered. And Jeff was finally like, you need to stop it. And he, you know, got black eyes out of it. And then to see it shift from that to like, I couldn't see anything like that happening at Anarchapulco. You know, like Anarchapulco 2023, I think the craziest thing that happened to somebody was a guy got stung by a bee and we had to use an EpiPen on him and he refused to go to the hospital after. But that was like the worst thing that happened. You know, it's really interesting to see how that shifts. And I'm proud to have been part of that because, yeah, it was. I mean, it was definitely worth going. And there's still like, there's a core group of people that, and these people I'm actually talking about aren't well-known people. They're not involved with the conference itself. They're not well-known in the community, but there's like this group of core people that have come almost every single year. And those people are the people that ended up becoming my family, you know, like, and a lot of these people aren't mentioned on that show. That's one of the things if I could do the show, I would do it very differently just because there were a lot of people left out that were huge parts of the story. And I get it. You fit 6 years into 6 episodes. It's not going to be you're not going to fit everybody. But yeah, I am definitely really proud. And I'm pretty excited. And it's funny to me that we're doing an event in Serbia. And I'm not going to be there in person. I can't yet. But I will be working the event, and that does actually lead me to my next question, which is what exactly are you offering at Liberpulco and what are you hoping to see?
Okay, so I'm offering a breathwork workshop. So it's rebirthing breathwork. So it's a group session. And I'll be guiding people, teaching people how to do the rebirthing. So beginners can come, or even people that have done it before, all are welcome. I have an assistant who is an angelic Reiki master, so we'll be offering people healing during their breathe if they want it. It's optional. And also, I only have an hour and 20 minutes, but what I want to do is help people discover their personal lie, which I spoke about earlier. Because this is a belief that many people have. It's called a personal lie because it's actually a lie, but it's usually formed between the age of 0 to 6 when we're wide open. We're in a state where things people say to us, we take on as total truth. So, for example, if you're at school and the teacher says you're really bad, the child might then think, oh, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. So then they take that on as the truth when actually it's not. And what it can have this, extremely negative effect on your life. And people usually do one of 3 things, or all these 3 things. They can either project it onto others to say you're bad, or they can act it out, and just behave in a bad way to kind of prove that it's true. Or they can do the extreme opposite, like just go overboard in trying to prove that it's wrong, just be totally good to the extreme. So I'm going to be helping people with that and helping them to discover what it is, what their most negative thought is, so that then they can, do the work to, to prove that that's not the truth, because it's like a blueprint for people. And so what we can do is when they're in the breathwork, when they're in a breathwork session, they can go into an altered state. They can say affirmations to themselves that are the opposite of their personal lie. So I'll be teaching people about that, and then having a beautiful, hopefully beautiful session with everyone in the group, and then afterwards we have an integration, which is sometimes magic can happen in the integration, where you stop the breathing and you just go into this beautiful state. So so that's what I'll be doing in the workshop, and hoping to see as many of the speakers as I can while I'm there. So yeah,
That's really exciting. I do wish I wish I could go, but we'll see
yeah.
what happens. This is Anarchapulco's first event, not in Acapulco, and I know Kat and I have been pushing for doing things in other places, because and even within Mexico, I'm hoping that we can expand to other places within Mexico, because Acapulco is awesome, but it is not, you know, it's not the only place in Mexico we can do things and get value out of, this event. So I'm really excited to see how this comes to fruition. And for people who can't travel but are still interested in seeing what the content is, obviously the breathwork session will not be recorded and put on the replay, but everything on the stage will be, so people will be able to go and watch it as it happens and have access to the replay to be able to get the information that's being taught without having to go, all the way across the planet, because it is, I'm laughing to myself a little bit that, like you would think that we would have put our second location somewhere more accessible, like Mexico City or something like that, a little more accessible, because Acapulco is the very bottom of Mexico. It is way out of the way for most people. And instead we went even more way out of the way with Liberpulco. But I think it's going to be something pretty special, especially because it's being held at one of Liberland's, I think it's like a satellite property would be the term for it. It's not Liberland itself. It's really close. It's in Serbia, in Apatin. So yeah, I am looking forward to seeing how that turns out. I'm gonna look at I got just a few more questions and then we'll wrap this up, because we don't want to have it be too long. We've already been here for a good hour, but I've really enjoyed the conversation so far. My next question is, if there's one thing you could get everybody to understand, what would it be? I know
That would be that you can heal your traumas and create the life that you want to live.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's true, as somebody, like, I've had probably thousands of people reach out to me at this point about my story, and they're like, well, how are you doing? Okay, and I've had people even tell me, hey, like, look, I was suicidal, but I saw your story and I saw that you're doing well and that you're happy, and I feel like if you can survive this and come out of it, anybody can. So yeah, use me as your example, because I remember hearing Jeff's 2021 speech. He called me out. Are you still there? Okay.
Yeah, it somehow kicked me out. I'm not sure if that was yours or mine.
It might have been a connection thing. What was the last thing you heard? And I can have Adam edit this out.
So it was just the asking me what advice I would give to people, one thing, and then you cut out.
Okay.
After I told you what it was.
Yeah, so I was just going and saying, it's really interesting that you say that, because I am one person that has been through a lot of things, and I've had people tell me, like, look, if you can get through, that your stuff, like, my stuff is nothing compared to that. And I don't necessarily like when people compare themselves, but there is a truth to that, like I have been through a lot of stuff that would make grown men buckle, but you absolutely can really heal these things. I mean, I remember in 2021 at Anarchapulco, Jeff in his speech was like, I was still going by Lily at the time. And he's like, and we have Lily here. And I thought she was done for after the murder. I thought that was it for her. And look at her, she's getting it done. And well, I mean, that's the truth. There are a lot of people that thought that. So I think that's a great message because there are a lot of people out there that are feeling pretty stuck and hopeless. The next thing that I have is just to have you share your social media handles, your website, where to find you, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing about, if anyone's feeling stuck, you can get unstuck. There is actually a solution to every problem. So, I managed to get myself unstuck where I thought that would never happen. Lily's come through some awful, traumatic events, and you look like you're thriving now. And, compared to where you were a long time ago, it's quite amazing, really. So I would just say as well that, if people haven't done spiritual practice or are not interested in it, just to try it, because this is an analogy that my teacher gave me. He said, when you're first doing spiritual practice, things happen in life, and it's like being nearer the shore. Waves keep crashing in, waves keep crashing in. But he said the more you do, you get further out to sea, and things happen, but the waves are quite gentle. So that's, for me, that really helps me, because I think, well, the more and more I do, the easier it's going to be to deal with whatever life throws at me. And certainly, in my experience, it has. Like now I'm so much more calmer. I can deal with things, in a state of relaxation and still get everything done. So, and I used to be very stressed and angry, and, so there is hope. So if anyone feels stuck, definitely try doing spiritual practice, reach out, whatever you want to do, just do something. So yeah, people can find me on our website, which is thequantumquestions.com. You can email me, sam@thequantumquestions.com. And if you are interested in our new platform, we will be launching soon. And that's the Heart Wisdom Collective on School with a K. And if you're coming to Liberpulco, I'd love to see you and join our workshop. So thank you, Lily. It's been great.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
interview.
you so much for taking the time to do this. I think this went really well. It was really cool because you and we've had many conversations privately about this stuff, and it was really cool to kind of hash out, especially because I'm in that, I'm at the point where I've had, I think, 5 or 6 of the personal breath work, which, yes, definitely do the workshop, but also the one-on-ones, that's where you really kind of like get into things and really address specific things that are bothering you, because once you kind of deal with those stuff, they just kind of float away. And yeah, the wave analogy is good because there are still waves, but instead of being like turbulently stuck in the underwater, drowning in them, I'm on top of it with a boogie board and a floaty, just like. So yeah, thank you for doing this, and thank you for all of the help over this year. And I'm hoping that you'll be coming back to Anarchapulco this year, because that would be really, really cool to see you and hug you again.
So too, would be amazing. So thank you, Lily. Miranda, sorry.
Yeah, it's hard to remember. Okay.
Miranda.